Have you ever wondered why some men leave a lasting mark on a woman's heart, while others fade from her memory like a passing stranger? What is it that makes a man unforgettable not just for a moment, but for a lifetime? Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and most importantly, watch this video all the way till the end, because what I'm about to share with you could completely change the way you experience love and relationships. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Now, let's get into it. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers and Roman emperors, once wrote, "What we do now echoes in eternity. In love, it's no different. The way you act, the choices you make, and the way you carry yourself. These things echo in the heart of a woman long after you're gone." And today, I'll reveal 6 timeless things a man does that a woman will never forget. 1. The power of presence. Do you remember the very first time you fell in love? Think back for a second. Not the casual crush, not the passing infatuation, but that one person who made your world feel different. Do you remember the way your heart raced when you were around them? The way every word they spoke seemed to matter? Now let me ask you this, what made those moments unforgettable? Was it the way they looked at you? The way they listened? Or maybe the way you felt like you were the only person in the world when you were with them? That, right there, is the power of presence. Most men think women remember them for what they bought, what they said, or how attractive they looked. But the truth is deeper. A woman never forgets the man who made her feel seen, not looked at, not noticed in passing, but truly seen, as if her words, her emotions, her stories mattered. Let me share with you a story. A man once told me about the girl he loved in college. She was beautiful, yes, but that wasn't what captured his heart. What he remembered years later was how, when he talked to her, she looked into his eyes and listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't judge. She just gave him space to be himself. And because of that, he always carried her memory. Now imagine flipping that around. You sitting across from a woman, and instead of just nodding or scrolling on your phone, you lean in. You listen to her talk about her childhood, about the silly dream she had when she was 7, about the scar on her knee from falling off a bike. To most men, these stories would fly past like wind. But you catch them. You hold them. You honor them. Do you know what happens then? You stop being just another man in her life and you become part of her memory, because memory is tied to emotion. And when you give someone the gift of your presence, you give them an emotion so powerful, it burns itself into their mind forever. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman undoing." What's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness? Think about how radical that is today. In a world where everyone is distracted, where people can't even sit through dinner without checking their phone, the man who is fully present stands out like a lighthouse in the storm. So let me ask you again, have you ever had someone truly listen to you? With no agenda, no rush, no distraction? Didn't it make you feel valued, almost like your soul was recognized? That's exactly how she feels when you give her that gift. And that, my friend, is why a woman never forgets a man who gives her the power of presence. Because presence is not just about being in the same room. It's about being in the same moment with your whole heart. 2. Strength wrapped in compassion. When you think of strength, what comes to mind? Is it the man who can lift the heaviest weights at the gym? Or the one who dominates every room he walks into? Most men confuse strength with hardness. They think women remember the man who shows off, who flexes his ego, who never bends. But here's the truth. Women don't remember the man who only proves his muscles. They remember the man who showed his strength wrapped in compassion. Think about it like this. Imagine you're standing beside the woman you love, and she's carrying a weight you can't see. Maybe she's been hurt before. Maybe she's facing something heavy in her life that she doesn't even have the words to explain. Now in that moment, she doesn't need a man to tell her to toughen up. She doesn't need someone who tries to solve everything for her like it's a math problem. What she needs Is someone strong enough to hold space for her pain? That is real strength. Let me tell you a short story. There was once a couple where the woman had lost her job unexpectedly. She felt embarrassed, defeated, and anxious about her future. Most men in this situation might panic. They might lecture her or worse, ignore her struggles. But this man? He didn't do any of that. He simply sat down with her, took her hand, and said, "I don't have all the answers, but I'm here with you. We'll figure this out together." He didn't solve her problem. He didn't try to fix everything in one night. But in that moment, his quiet strength and his gentle compassion made her feel safe. Years later, when she was asked what she remembered most about their relationship, she didn't talk about the gifts he gave her. She didn't talk about his looks. She said, "He made me feel safe when I was falling apart." That's the kind of memory that never fades. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In other words, don't respond to chaos with more chaos. Don't respond to weakness with arrogance. Real strength is the ability to remain calm when the world shakes, and to soften your heart when someone you love is hurting. So let me ask you, viewer, when the woman you love is upset, how do you respond? Do you shut down? Do you get frustrated? Or do you hold her close, steady her heart, and show her that she's not alone? Because here's the secret a woman never forgets. The man who was strong enough to carry himself, and compassionate enough to carry her emotions when she couldn't. That balance, the iron hand in the velvet glove, is what separates a man she forgets from a man she remembers forever. 3. Living with purpose. What drives you when you wake up in the morning? Is it just the thought of surviving another day? Paying bills, getting through work, scrolling through your phone, and then repeating it all again tomorrow? Or do you wake up with a fire or reason? A purpose that pulls you out of bed with meaning? Here's something women never forget. A man who lives with purpose. See, women can feel it. They can sense whether a man is drifting aimlessly, or whether he's anchored by something bigger than himself. And here's the truth when you live without purpose. You might get her attention for a little while, but you'll never hold her respect. Think about the relationships you've had. Do you remember a time when you lost yourself? When your whole world revolved around her and nothing else? Maybe you stopped chasing your goals. Maybe you forgot your own dreams because you were so focused on her. What happened then? She pulled away, didn't she? And you were left wondering why? It's because deep down, women are drawn to men who have their own path. Men who don't make a woman their entire world, but instead invite her to join them in building something greater. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man who loved writing music. It was his passion, something he did not for money, but because it made him feel alive. He met a woman he deeply loved, and while they dated, he never abandoned his music. He didn't push her aside for it, but he didn't give it up either. He kept chasing his dream, even on days when it felt hard. Years later, when that relationship ended, do you know what she said about him? She said, "I will never forget the way his eyes lit up when he talked about his music. He had something that gave his life meaning." It wasn't the expensive dinners, the compliments, or even the romantic gestures that stuck in her heart. It was the fact that he was a man who lived for something beyond her. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Stop wasting time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." And being one starts with purpose. So let me ask you honestly, what's your purpose? What are you building, even if nobody else claps for you? Because here's the secret. A woman will never forget a man whose life has direction. When you move with purpose, you inspire her. You awaken something in her. She doesn't just remember the man who loved her. She remembers the man who had a mission, who walked with conviction, who refused to drift through life like everyone else. And that, my friend, is why women never forget a man who lives with purpose. Because purpose isn't just attractive, it's unforgettable. 4. Emotional self-control. Have you ever said words in anger that you later regretted? Words that slipped out in the heat of the moment. Words that cut deeper than you intended. And then, when the fire cooled, you wished you could take them back. But it was too late? We've all been there. But here's the truth: a woman never forgets how a man handles his emotions, especially during conflict. You see, most men believe strength is about being loud, dominant, or forceful. But true strength? It's the ability to master yourself when emotions are pulling you in every direction. Think about it. Imagine a couple in the middle of an argument. The woman is upset, maybe even crying, maybe raising her voice. The average man would either explode in anger or completely shut down, leaving her feeling alone. But the man who is unforgettable? He doesn't match her storm with his own. He steadies himself. He breathes. He listens. He responds with clarity, not chaos. That kind of man leaves a lasting impression, not because he never gets emotional, but because he doesn't let emotions control him. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This applies perfectly to love. You can't control what she says. You can't control how she feels in that moment, but you can control yourself, your tone, your words, your response. Let me share a story with you. There was once a man who deeply loved his girlfriend, but she struggled with trust because of her past. Sometimes small things triggered big arguments. One evening she lashed out at him unfairly, accusing him of things he hadn't done. Most men would have shouted back or maybe walked out the door, but this man didn't. He calmly looked at her and said, "I can see you're hurting. I'm not your enemy. I love you and I'm not going anywhere. Let's talk about this when you're ready." Do you know what happened? Her anger broke into tears because his calm reminded her that she was safe. And years later, when she was asked what she remembered most about him, she said, "He never lost himself in the middle of my storms. He anchored me when I was drowning." That's the kind of memory a woman never forgets. So let me turn this question back to you. When conflict arises in your relationships, do you let your emotions take the wheel? Or do you master them, guiding the moment with calm strength? Because here's the truth: any man can fall into anger, jealousy, or frustration. But the man who controls those emotions, instead of being controlled by them, is the man who stays in her memory forever. Remember this: storms come and go in every relationship. But if you can be the calm within the storm, you'll be the man she will never, ever forget. 5. The courage of authenticity. Have you ever pretended to be someone you're not, just to impress someone you liked? Maybe you exaggerated your achievements, maybe you hid your flaws, maybe you told little lies just so she'd think more highly of you. And in that moment, it might have worked. But deep down, didn't you feel a little empty? Like you were playing a character instead of being yourself? Here's the truth: a woman may forget the man who played a role, but she never forgets the man who dared to be real. Authenticity takes courage. It's not about perfection, it's about honesty. And honesty, when it comes from the heart, creates memories that no one can erase. Think back to your first love. Remember those moments where you let your guard down, where you confessed something vulnerable, something true about yourself. Maybe it was about your family, your fears, your past mistakes. Do you remember how she looked at you in that moment? With softness, maybe even admiration? That was the power of authenticity. Let me share a story. There was once a man who wasn't wealthy, wasn't particularly tall, and wasn't the smoothest talker. In fact, by society's shallow standards, he was average. But there was one thing that made him unforgettable: he never pretended. When he liked a woman, he told her openly. When he didn't know something, he admitted it. When he was wrong, he apologized. And do you know what women said about him? He was real. He didn't play games. That's the kind of courage most men lack. They hide behind masks, trying to appear tougher, richer, cooler, more desirable than they really are. But here's the problem: masks might win attention, but they don't win hearts. Because eventually the mask slips, and when it does, the illusion shatters. Marcus Aurelius said it best: be content to seem what you really are. Not what others expect, not what society praises, what you really are. Women never forget the man who lives by that rule, because he stands out in a world full of pretenders. He doesn't try to be perfect, he tries to be true. So let me ask you, honestly, what kind of man are you showing to the world? Are you putting on a performance? Or are you letting her see the real you, your scars, your flaws, your dreams, your truth? Because here's the secret. Women don't fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with authenticity. They fall in love with the man who says, "This is me. I may not be perfect, but I am real." And that kind of man, he stays in her heart long after the actors have left the stage. That's why women never forget the man with the courage to be authentic. Because authenticity is rare, and rarity is unforgettable. 6. Leaving a legacy of respect. When you look back at your past relationships, what do you think the women you once loved remember about you the most? Do they remember the sweet words? The gifts? The late-night conversations? Maybe. But more than anything else, what stays etched in memory is how you treated them. Respect, that's the word. A woman never forgets a man who treated her with dignity, not as an object, not as a possession, but as a human being with her own dreams, her own voice and her own worth. Think back to the moments in your own story. Maybe you had someone you loved deeply, but you didn't always know how to show respect. Maybe there were times you raised your voice or dismissed her feelings, or made her feel small without even realizing it. And now, when you think of her, doesn't part of you wish you had handled things differently? That's the truth about respect. Once it's missing, the relationship cracks. But when it's present, it leaves a legacy that lasts forever. Let me share a story. There was a man who dated a woman for several years. Their love story was filled with ups and downs, like all relationships. But one thing stood out: he never disrespected her. Even during fights, he didn't insult her. Even when he disagreed, he didn't belittle her. He challenged her, yes, but always with kindness. He didn't always say the perfect words, but he always made sure she felt valued. Years later, after they parted ways, she spoke of him to a friend and said, "We didn't last forever, but he was the only man who truly respected me." I'll never forget that. That's powerful, isn't it? Because while love may fade, the memory of respect endures. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." And what is a good man? It's not about being flawless. It's not about being rich, tall, or famous. It's about treating people, especially the women, who open their hearts to you with consistent dignity. So let me ask you, how do you treat the women in your life? Not just the one you love, but also your sister, your mother, your colleagues, even strangers? Because the way you treat them reflects the man you really are. Respect is more than manners. It's more than opening doors or paying for dinner. It's in the way you listen when she speaks. It's in the way you encourage her dreams instead of mocking them. It's in the way you hold her accountable without tearing her down. And here's the secret: a woman may forgive mistakes. She may forget arguments, but she will never forget the way you made her feel respected. That's the legacy every man should strive for. Not just to be remembered as someone she once loved, but as someone who showed her that love and respect should always walk hand in hand. Because in the end, respect isn't just something you give, it's something you leave behind. And that is unforgettable. Bringing it together? Now let's connect all this. The presence that makes her feel seen. The strength with compassion that makes her feel safe. The purpose that inspires her. The emotional control that stabilizes her world. The authenticity that makes her trust you. And the respect that leaves a legacy. These 6 qualities aren't tricks. They aren't games. They're the timeless foundations of what it means to be a man worth remembering. Marcus Aurelius never wrote about women directly, but his Stoic wisdom gives us the blueprint. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.